I mean, I
Yeah.
think they're all good ideas worthy of more discussion. I just wanted to shed some light on
Yeah.
why they, what are potential problems related to them.
Yeah. Yeah. And there are potential problems for everything we're talking about, probably,
Yeah.
Ultimately. Hey, so you're going to need that stroller back anytime soon?
Maybe after April 18th.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
That's our expected due date. So
so have you made announcements, or is it common knowledge?
we've
Or?
made it public now, so it can
Uh-huh.
be shared. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, I think that's wonderful news.
Thank you. So do we.
Um,
It's exciting.
Yeah, it is very, very good news and wonderful. And yeah, we have been had the opportunity to use both the stroller and the pack and play. Yes, they are, Mary Jane. Mary Jane just heard it. I don't know,
Yeah.
that's her door in the background into her studio. I made her close it because she was very noisy and I didn't
Oh
want to
no.
distract.
Yeah, actually, Niley brought up to me. She said, "Oh, you can let them just hold on to that. It's a good reason for you to get me a new one." And I said,
gosh.
"Well,
That's a great stroller for uneven surface and stuff compared to the one that Max has down in the city,
uh-huh."
where she lives. She's got a 4-wheel one and it's very cushy, but it wouldn't work on the streets around here nearly as nice as that one does.
We use that all over Europe on cobblestones. If going down into the subway,
Uh-huh.
where I would, running down the stairs, I would grab Robert in one arm, just fold it up and jump on, and yeah, and it was more practical than I had imagined. I thought it was really silly to be trying to fly with the stroller, but once we were there, I was very appreciative.
Yeah, to have it. Yeah, because it does take up space. Yeah. Well, cool. So that's not going to be a problem. And the pack and play, they actually got one too, so they can now bring their own up. So.
All right. Well, I'm not in any hurry, but I appreciate knowing that it's
No. I figured that was the best excuse for me to be able to ask the question without being too pushy.
all right.
Because I didn't being pushy. Me. I didn't want to be.
What are we pushing on?
Not just pushy on asking questions of Ryan. Oh. Mary Jane just said from the background, "That's my job, being pushy." Okay, well, I'm going to go use the bathroom before this starts, and then I'll be right back, guys.
All right, very good.
New information. And he's gone too.
Everybody's gone. I can hear you, Ed.
Okay, I just want to let you know, I even if Otto's not here, his questions I think linger on, and I brought them up, and I will open that up for discussion.
Sure, I think that's very well represented. That's a good idea to do.
I don't think I can do it quite as well as he does, but I can.
Well, he might participate. I hope he does.
Okay.
Well, yes, I know that was too much information, but I figured since it's just Ryan and Ed, my buds, it was all right.
There you go.
I definitely would not have said that if anybody else was here.
I don't know who else is here. Hey,
nobody right now.
True. Ryan, was your family able to Zoom internationally?
That's a good question. They use WhatsApp, and there's video, voice recording, emojis, text messages. That is sort of the primary family communication that they all prefer to use.
Is it live?
Yeah.
And they see each other like this?
I think they do. I think they can.
All right.
Yeah, I don't, maybe I don't think they use Zoom so much, but they like WhatsApp.
It's like, is it simple like Facebook is where you, Facebook? Yeah.
Yeah,
FaceTime,
yeah, I
where
think
it's
it is.
just you and me.
I think so, but I
Yeah.
don't use it, so I don't know for sure.
They don't let you in on it?
Well, I intentionally stay off because it gets used so much all day, every day that it just, and then with time changes between Europe and South America, it's just dinging all day and all night. And
Oh, like she's got a sister there in Europe.
yeah. And then
That's right.
any photograph that is sent by any cousin, aunt, grandma is then stored in my photo log. And all of a sudden, a week I have 2,000 new photos on my computer.
Hi,
So
Jim.
it's safer for me not to be involved.
Yeah, good move.
Hey, Ed. Hey, Ryan.
How are you?
Hey, Jim.
Good. Hey, Jovan.
Greetings, neighbor.
Hey, you notice all this sun?
I do.
Uh,
I was just thinking, feel like I'm in the dark compared to the three of you. It's something about
Well-
where my computer is, I think.
thanks to PG&E, PG&E's crews that were cutting all the limbs and everything around the lines. We have new sunshine in the afternoon.
Really?
Oh, good. Yeah, you have more afternoon sunshine. That's great.
Yep.
Yeah, I
No,
wish I
we're-
could get
we're-
my neighbor to cut a few trees to get more afternoon sunshine. I
Yeah,
still
we're-
have it, but it gets to a point where it just goes under the massive trees and it's gone.
Yeah.
This is the only time of year that we actually get the sunset right on the ocean.
Right?
It
Nice.
started about 5 days ago, and it's just it'll set just to the left of the water tower down on Main Street, and
That's
it just goes straight to the ocean for a while. 2 months,
Wow.
that's it. Goes back.
Yeah.
That's it.
Hi, Alan. Hi, Denick.
Hi.
Things-
Hey, Alan, Denick.
Hi.
So who else are we expecting?
Tina is not going to make it today. Have not heard from Maggie, but
Maggie hasn't made one yet.
no.
No.
Not sure about Otto. And I believe Donna is going to try and be here. She hasn't told me she wouldn't be.
Well, good.
Well, we'll wait just a couple of episodes. Here it comes. Hey, Dan.
Whoop.
He didn't want to be seen. Dan, you didn't look that bad. Come on, Dan. Come on.
There you go.
Much better. I'm glad you put on some makeup.
More makeup?
More makeup. You are sitting in a sunspot, my friend.
I know.
Yeah, you're not going to make it very long there. He was going for free warmth. Yeah, I'm going to have to close the front door. My dog is, he loves to just sit out there with his nose outside and watch people that go by to make sure they don't steal apples or something. But it's getting cold, so I'm going to close this.
All right.
Yeah, I think what we're going to have to do is assume that anybody else is either going to come, they'll just have to know that they were a little late and they're going to join in as they do. Okay, so we'll bring the meeting to order. And Ryan, do we have to note who's here for the record or?
I've already written that down, but you can call the meeting to order at 4:03.
Okay, and approval of the agenda, which is relatively simple. Any issues with it? Okay, I assume approved. Public comment for non-agenda items. Dan, this is you.
You're mute, Dan.
No, thank
Okay.
you. So that,
Okay, so now we're going to go into what we're really here for, the discussion of ideas relating to groundwater management. Did everybody get a copy of the ideas and partial discussions that Ryan brought?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
I think these are excellent starting points. We have heard most of these somewhat before in some angle. So I'll just start with the first one, question one. This is about excess water, okay? And this is about excess water and how to save it, how to, what can you do with it? And so I think this is a very good point. I think it starts off talking about the different rain barrels, catch stations, holding tanks, and the concept of having excess water is brought up. And if you don't use all your water at one time, hey Donna, I think that it's prudent if you have the reserves to store it. And there is a part in the brand new ordinance, that's 2020, page or section 11, page 13, that talks about this. They're talking about the property can extract 2 times their daily allotment during the month of January through March to save for later if rainfall in October, December is 120% of normal. So is there any question about what Ryan has answered there that might be a problem? Or you want to add to it?
Yeah, the only thing that I want to kind of make sure that folks understand is that if you're catching, water that's, just coming down or flowing, you don't want to mix that with your drinking water because it's a whole different set of water quality issues. You have a lot of potentially fecal matter, all the things that, just, wash down, once it hits the ground that you don't get, hopefully, when you have a well, because it gives, that the soil has all that cleansing power, basically when you pump.
Right. But I think this particular question is only about groundwater. So it's questioning, because anybody can save rainwater off your
Right.
roof, and that has no connection to what we do.
Right.
But you're absolutely correct. If you're foolish enough to drink it straight off your roof, you could be in trouble. And
Right.
the same thing if you're catching it on some sort of a creek or something. But this is talking about groundwater.
Okay. Yeah, I'm reading it again, and it I guess that is what they're saying.
You make
Yeah.
a very good point, Jim, that there are different standards and regulations, and mixing surface water and groundwater should be avoided
Yeah.
for safety reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It should be stored separately.
And if you do mix it, it should only stay with the non-potable water.
Yeah.
If you have an excess of potable water and you want to throw it into rain barrels that's coming off the roof, fine. Don't let it go backwards. Don't let it go back to you. But that's a helpful thing. I did want to bring up, because the way Ryan set this up, because this was from Tuesdays today, on this very same question, he mentioned as a question. This is on the last page, one of the last pages. It's not numbered, but it's from Ryan as of dated today. And one of the things he asks as a question is, could the stored water be traded, sold, gifted, or otherwise? Thoughts? Well,
it would be just like you're purchasing water from, Mendocino Water, if you provide water to your neighbor, I mean, that's an agreement between you and your neighbor, I would think. it wouldn't go towards your allotment or against your allotment. It would be just something that you would purchase or be gifted. That's kind of my thought.
There would be an interesting feeling in on one block. We know how certain areas, even though we're all about, a couple 100 yards away from each other, but one person has an allotment for 200 gallons and this other guy has an allotment for 200 gallons. One is not doing very well. The other's not even living there. So he's doing very well. So he has a 1,500 gallon tank or 2,000 gallon tank, and he fills it every day automatically. And then at the end of that period, when that tank is full, the water truck comes by and takes it. That might make the whole neighborhood feel a little bit like, wait a minute. Yeah, even though it came from the well and it was allotted, taking water from one area of Mendocino to another area, to my knowledge, has never been done. Now, I understand gifting as far as running a hose across a fence, but I am very concerned of trucking water out of the district. I'm not concerned about gifting in the short, neighborly thing of helping somebody, but the concept of driving it off the block, out of the area, that to me would be a problem.
Where does some of the water come from that gets bought today? Doesn't some of it just come from Casper?
The majority
No.
of it comes from the city of Fort Bragg.
Okay.
They treat water out of the Noyo River. They have Newman Gulch and Waterfall Gulch, which are two sort of creeks that goes into some reservoirs, goes through their treatment plant. And they have a 300,000 gallon tank on Highway 20. And as their water doesn't get circulated out of that tank as frequently as they would like, so over time, the chlorine residual begins to decrease. And if it gets below 0.4 parts per million, they have to waste some of that water. They'll dump like 30,000 gallons back into Hare Creek. And rather than dump water that they've taken the time to treat and clean back into the creek, and they have to dechlorinate it, of course, before they dump it back, they basically provide it for free to the water delivery companies who really only charge you for their trucking time. And that's where the majority of this water comes from.
You say the majority. Does any of it come from other wells?
I believe some comes from Casper, but I can't verify that because I don't know for a fact. I do know for a fact from my time working in Fort Bragg.
Yeah, the reason I asked is one of my neighbors said that some of the water came from Casper, and to the point Ed was making, the guys in Casper don't seem to be upset about shipping water out of Casper to serve Mendocino, as far as I know. I mean, has anybody ever complained?
I take care of the water in Casper. It doesn't come from Casper. It comes from Fort Bragg. Skip used to get it from Casper, but then the EPA came out and it was going to cost him a lot of money. So right now he gets his water from Fort Bragg. Sometimes he gets it from Elk when Fort Bragg is short.
Right. I was going to say, historically, he has also gone to Elk and Westport.
Right.
And that makes a very expensive class of water.
Wow.
Yeah. So anyhow, it's just a thought. I don't know that I have a recommendation on the idea of what we should do about that, but I think that if you're going to be saving water, it could come to the point where somebody needs water, and I don't know if we're going to have a policy on that or not. But I just don't know that it would look that good. Any other thoughts on catchment systems?
So my other question was, the 2 times given an amount of rainfall, how is that regulated, or is it regulated at all? In other words, if somebody is storing water but the rainfall is under the limit and they're pumping twice as much, what happens? I mean, they go to water jail or what?
I didn't understand the question.
So the point was that the ordinance says that if the rainfall is over a certain amount, you can pump double your allowance and put it in a tank. My question is, who decides if the rainfall is under that? How do you find out that somebody can't pump additional water, and how is it regulated?
Oh, that would be basically through the ordinance and through the reporting. And at this point, it's, honor system reporting to Ryan, your monthly, allotments. And if you go over that, then yeah, you get
But that
the,
water is metered coming out of the holding tank into your house. If you
No,
put
it's
it in the
it's
holding
metered
tank.
coming out of your well.
right.
Coming out of your well, not in my house. It's not.
Uh-oh.
Maybe you
You might
should
not wanna
relook
mention
at
that.
the meter.
I don't
Get him,
think so.
Ryan.
I know.
Yeah, the meter is within a short distance of the wellhead.
Yes, that's true.
Sometimes it's not right on the wellhead because it's an impossibility to read it or something. Mine, I bring it out over to the fence post and up so I can actually not have to get on the ground and see how it goes.
Yeah,
But,
you might want to look, Alan, to see where the pipe from your water well goes, and it might go to your holding tank, but hopefully it's going from its pumping, and it's going through the meter and directly into your tank, and not from your tank into your house, that kind of thing.
I'll say no more. I could be in trouble. I gotta go look.
I'll go look.
Ed, can I
I
ask a
didn't do it, by
question?
the way. I bought it that way.
Ed, can I ask a
Any other
question?
questions on this one?
Yeah.
Any other discussion? Denick?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. So Ryan, there's an allotment which for a 2-bedroom house might be around 5,000 gallons a month.
It would typically be 6,000, but yeah.
6,000, okay, 6,000.
gallons a day, correct.
And the general assumption implied in part of this discussion is that if people during the wintertime especially are just using 2,500 gallons,
Right.
for example, they could get a 10,000 gallon tank ostensibly, and they could pump closer to their full, or they could fill it with their hose basically up to the 6,000 gallons a month.
Yeah.
Store 10,000, and then that could get them through a dry summer
Yes,
Absolutely, and I would
when their
encourage.
well goes dry.
yes.
Is that correct? So my
Yes.
question is, would something like that happening in winter where you had, say, let's say 30% of your customers pumping all the way to their allotment for 3 or 4 months during the winter, do you think that might impact water for everyone else during the summer?
My estimation is yes, it might, because most people have an allotment that they were given, assigned, because they were already there the day that we started to do this. So they have, like myself, I have a 200 gallon a day allotment. I didn't prove it. I didn't have to prove it. It existed, so I got it. So we don't know if I pump my full 200 gallons a day, I might harm my neighbors. So that is the problem of the system. You know,
Right.
some are proven they have enough water, and the majority are gifted.
Yeah.
So it's
But
you have to understand, our system is not based on a
proven
fairness.
it based on a hydrology report, right?
Some people's are.
Yeah.
Right.
Mine is.
Mine was.
Yours is not. I
His
understand.
was.
I understand. Some are.
His was, yes. I'm not sure about yours, Denick. I don't know, nor Alan's.
I'm in
I don't know either.
I'm in Big River Vista with 18 other homes.
Oh, right. And yours is
Oh.
pre-ordinance. So yours was gifted also.
Yeah.
And down at Hills Ranch had a test, but it wasn't by the same standards, correct? Yeah. And Dan, I can't remember. I think, God, I can't remember if your house was built before the ordinance or not. I can't remember. It's right around that time. So it is uneven, is that as the how you got on the system. But I don't think that changes anything. I think that if you have that allotment, you are allowed to use it. And if
Okay, so let me just ask another question and kind of put that on its head. If 30% of people sort of use that excess capacity during the winter, filled up their 10,000 gallon tanks, and then we're able to use that during the summer,
right,
would ostensibly that might benefit the whole community where wells typically go dry. Is that a fair?
because you were
I mean, it's
using
not
that water in the summertime.
If you're using the water in your tank during the summer,
Well, I would
instead of pumping from your well in some sort of way, you know, it's complicated, but it's just kind of like a what if, you know, would it actually help the situation?
I think it would really depend upon a number of things, unfortunately. If you're still taking away from the total storage of the groundwater system, even when you have a year that you have a lot of rain, or if you're doing it during the rainy winter season, it's still part of the total amount of recharge that is not available to, you know, go down into the fracture systems and kind of do that, you know, 500 to 600 feet a year that Mike Maley was talking about, that the groundwater flows. So potentially it could, you know, help, you know, people that, well, it would help the people that extract during the winter time, because that they'd have, you know, additional water for the summer. But the overall storage might not help those that the system doesn't recharge as quickly, potentially. And it might actually, you know, affect your neighbors that rely on that winter recharge for their summer, you know, allotment. And they might go dry no matter what, but they might go dry faster if those folks were extracting during the winter time to store. Does that make sense?
It does, kind of. I guess I'm really asking the question, would things be better across the community if people had a bunch of larger tanks that they could fill up and use during the hotter months, early fall? And it sounds like there's so many variables and so many questions here that there's not a valid answer. And in fact, it might not help.
Sorry.
It's not a scientific answer that I'm going to give you, but it's just observation. Observation by me is that in the wintertime, on a normal year, defined as what, but in a normal year, you cannot save water by not using it. It's going to go by you. It's going to flow out. What was it? 62% goes out. So my thought is, it's like, if you were living,
goes out to the sea.
Yes, sleeps out, straight on out. It was, you know, and so if you were, because you'd still be within that amount, so it's not a huge amount that you're taking out for later. So my estimation is a normal winter, you can store it and you won't harm the thing. And if everybody had a tank, that would help. But don't forget, a 10,000 gallon tank is a lot of money. It's a lot of space, and everybody can't do it. Yeah. Everybody can't do it. But if more people did do it, I think, yes, it would. I think one of the water systems that is still a possibility in this town is groundwater taken out from a lot of different places, pumped back up to a very expensive holding tank, and then redistributed. But that's a couple of $1 million project.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I started asking the question. I obviously wasn't the only one, was because of the comment about how much water is pumped versus the stuff that goes out, and particularly with the guys up here being kind of like, hey, half our water disappears, you don't really need it anyway. That might make them feel a bit more comfortable if they did that, if they could afford it.
I mean, I see what Jim's saying, because you're like,
shaking his head. No, I don't know why.
it is kind of taking a dent out of the overall recharge. But I think also there's another thing. In this particular town, it's not just that we have, if we get back to a regular winter, we have less people here. The population goes down. So we have more water going by us and less people using it. So storage to me has always been the answer. And I can only afford money-wise and space-wise about 1,500 gallons. That's it. And that's average in town. If you look at the little black.
So it sounds like there's divergent views, and it's complicated and a little bit hard to pin down. The other thing, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I think what Mike Maley is doing is something that could help answer that question. He's built this model that's based on observations over the years, and the beauty of this model is that you can change the parameters to show you, what the result of this would be. So that the question that we're asking right now, that would be a good simulation run that he could add those parameters in to see what would happen in a 3-year time period or a 5-year time period of, somebody, banking their water, given this precipitation and that simulation, to see if the neighbors down the way are negatively affected, or, it doesn't matter, or, just what. I mean, it is very complicated, but that's the beauty of, a model, that we're building to try to make it robust to simulate these kind of questions that we're bringing up. It costs money for him to run them, but it's something that, can be done other than just us kind of theorizing, what happened.
Ryan, do you think you could present that as a question of cost and time to Mike?
Sure.
I think that might be better. I mean, I know what I know, and I have no basis other than what I saw and what I've, noticed about people in rain, water.
Yeah, well, and you notice around here when we get a good rain, there's a lot going down the streets, and my creek finally runs, and it's gone basically, and I'm thinking that's where a lot of that 60% goes. It's not the stuff that's going down that you're going to be able to get right away, even though it seems, according to Mike, the aquifer rebounds pretty quickly, but I think there's a lot of that's just runoff going into the drainages. So
into the
the ordinance as it stands has effectively made a decision of some sort. So if we're talking about modifying the ordinance, the allowance is already there, and the question is whether it goes up, down, or whatever, really, right? I mean, because
I think the main question is for the hydrologist would be, given the model, if people took extra out during the winter, during the rainy months, is that going to have an impact on available water in the summer for other people? That's kind of the question. There is a related piece, and that was part of the questions here, if I can just chime in one more time, and that's around rain catchment. I mean, I put a rain catchment system on our home. We've got an 1,100 gallon tank, and we use that during the summer for gardens and things. I guess there's a related question to that. I mean, a couple of questions. One is, does it Well, one question I've heard people raise, and I don't think it has a significant impact, but I'll just raise it now, is does capturing rainwater, does that affect the water that goes into the ground? And I think the percentage that it affects in terms of square footage is so small as to be de minimis and
Yep.
not worth looking at very closely. I think the other question is, would that have, for irrigation purposes for people's gardens, would that help in any significant way if there were an effort within the town, within the community, to promote rain catchment systems?
Mhm.
I think that's the question that we were kind of saying there, where it is an insignificant amount of water if everyone did it. Yeah, the issue is that really when it comes off of a roof and it hits the ground, a lot of it's going to soak in, but a lot of it's going to keep on heading because it's too much for the ground to take. So it usually just goes off the ground somewhere. It migrates pretty quickly here. I mean, I'm on a hill, so yeah.
Yeah.
Any other things on that one? Because next,
No.
this question is basically the same thing. It's talking about sharing water with a common tank, and I think the subdivisions do that. And I think that there are a couple of places in town that do that. Red House, Greenhouse across the street from the Corners of the Mouth. Ponds. It's just I had a bad experience with a pond on Main Street, so I'm still
There's a bias. Is that what
still
you're saying?
not crazy about ponds. They let me down. But ponds leak, and ponds have a tendency to have higher evaporation rates than I thought was possible on a boggy day.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that people should not do that, because I think most ponds, in my opinion, would be taking water off of a roof or off of a little stream that only forms that for an hour after it rains, and putting that into a pond. And so I don't think it has an effect. I don't think it's, I think there's other organizations that might have a say in it more than us, I think. Fish and Game, county, I don't know who else would have a say in it, but I didn't find that to
There's
be.
nothing to stop people from sharing water between wells, and we're kind of happy to leave it like that. And it's a neighbor to neighbor thing, and they have to come to some agreement about what they do when somebody does this, somebody does that.
Yeah, I think you have to be careful if you're sharing with a business, though, because then it becomes a public water system. Isn't that right, Donna? If if a restroom is involved and people are coming and going, it'd be like a transient water system. And then you're regulated by the state to have to monitor that water, since it's being served to the public as well.
That may well be a food place involved, you mean? Yeah, that may well be. But we have numerous places that have pipes permanently going from one property to another property to another property. But the key is we control or we regulate the wellhead. How they distribute it is their business. And so far, none of those, only one of those that I know of has been through a restaurant, and that's the hotel.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they asked anybody.
Yeah, and if I was in Indiana, that's what I did. We regulated those type of businesses as far as if they were sharing their water, we'd have to make sure that, if there was any public involved, especially water for restrooms, that kind of thing, then it would become a regulated entity. And I would think that California has something similar, but yeah. And then if you're sharing it between your neighbors, Donna, what is it for the number?
I was just gonna say Donna.
No, well, she runs the water systems here in the area, and she's I'm sure more up on the regulations here than anybody else, or at least I am. When does it become a true water system? Do you know?
Well, different categories. So
Yeah.
communities is 15 houses or more. Non-transient, non-communities is so many people 6 months out of the year. Transient is so like the hotel gets a good percentage of its water from the reeds. So, but because they use it, they have to test, and
Right.
it's regulated.
Right.
And Corners and the McCullum House have a share.
Right.
Yes. So they would have the same testing things because they're a restaurant.
Right. Well, the McCallum House does all the testing, and then they share it with
Yep.
Corners, and Corners doesn't have to test.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah.
But I don't think
Sorry.
that's anything. Sorry.
No, I was, if that conversation's finished, I was gonna circle back to the selling your water if you store it. And I think
Right.
the conclusion we reached, Ed, was that you don't necessarily like it, or we don't necessarily like it as a body, but we're not really gonna put our heads in there or put our foot in that.
I wouldn't. I think that it's a problem if it may be legal to do it, but I wouldn't think that would make a good public relations to be selling water, which is in short supply. It's a known short supply thing, and you're selling it to somebody.
I agree, it's not a good idea. I'm just saying from our point of view as a committee and recommendations, we're just not going to go there either way.
I think we get into some real kind of fuzzy areas there. Since MCCSD basically provides not regulates groundwater, but we're basically, well, we do regulate groundwater in a way.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
So the state might start looking at that kind of oddly if people were selling their water to other people, and we might get sideways with them somehow.
My question was, do we want to do anything about it, or do we just want to leave it alone? Because we've already regulated how much water people can pull out. We've said they can have extra water. We've said they can store it. And with all due respect to some people don't care what their neighbors think. And if they want to sell their water, they're going to sell their water, and if we try and stop them, that may not be a good thing. So I'm just asking the question,
Right.
do we want to touch that, or
I can tell you one time in town where it went very bad. There used to be the second laundromat in town was over where Zoe's is. Everybody know where Zoe's is, the coffee shop, right? And he was having water problems. Obviously, he didn't have a good water system, but he had a good building, so he put a laundromat in it. And his brother-in-law down on the flats had a nice well, plenty of water. His proposal was to take the water from that area and pump it up to his water tank. All hell broke loose. All hell broke loose. And it was within the district, but it was going from a residential to a commercial. And so could he do it? Was it legal? I don't know. But he stopped because there was one of the neighbors down there was a very good lawyer. And he said the lawyer words and it stopped.
Yeah.
But so again, my question is not how bad things have been. My question was, for this committee, are we just going to close that and put it to one side?
I'd say
that was my question. I don't think I've heard an answer.
Yeah, I'd say we not deal with it because I think it would be a potential problem. Number one, you might have some diversion from one part of the town to the other part of the town of water, and I don't think we want to promote that. I don't personally, I'd say we not deal with it.
I mean, that's where I would go. I'm just making sure I understood what the overall answer from everybody else to the question.
I do. I would like to do a very, very political thing. Punt. We are a committee. We will not make a decision, but we should mention that we had discussion on this and pass it on to them for their enlightenment.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
Supreme Court's apparently very good at that.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So we did
So
Anything else?
Yeah, I'd just like to add, my personal opinion is if we're advising the board with this meeting, going over these things and advising the board, I think that we, as an advisory committee, should advise the board or encourage the board to not allow that kind of stuff, or to, really look closely at it. I don't think we punt. I think we make a statement from this conversation saying that we don't think it's a good idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I just see that as different than punting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I agree with that. Yeah, I mean, from what Ed said with past experience, it's good to raise the fact that we thought about it, but also to say, based on past experience, it's probably not a good idea, but the idea did come up. So at least that's
and believe me, if it did come up, I would be one of the first people to try to raise that to the State Water Resources Control Board to see what their thoughts were on it. So, so that, because that doesn't.
So that's a position that's understandable, Ryan?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. We're going to drag it out.
Okay, and the next one basically is talking about, again, sharing wells in town. This is question 3. And I think we basically went over that. That's done. It is done. And I think what they're talking about here is not going from one district to another district, blocks to blocks. We're talking neighbors to neighbors.
Yeah.
I have no issue with that. When I went through the first drought, I had never seen such a thing as this little metal thing that was a female to female, and it was to connect garden hoses over fences. And because I couldn't figure out how you're going to get water from that person's house to another person's house, and Barry Cusick said, "Oh, you want one of these?" So me,
Jim, I'll be up the road with my hose pipe in the next day or two in the dark.
Exactly. Well, it was a lot of bad water moving around this town. I think the next one is the question of hydrological studies, and this is talking about how expensive they are, because that's part of the issue of someone has a property, they have multiple rooms in it, and the use was always of this, and they want to go up to this. And it also has to do with the concept of housing, trying to make sure that there's more apartments in town. But they're coming up against our water standards, which I believe in. And the way around our water standards is a hydrological study. And that makes it very expensive for certain projects. So it's those damn engineers charging too much.
Yeah,
but I don't know how else you can do it.
Yeah, and I know that was a concern one of my neighbors brought to me, that they were also kind of leery of when these hydro studies when they are performed, there's pretty minimal oversight by MCCSD, the county, basically on, if they were truly conducted properly and designed properly, and they were hoping that there could be a change in that oversight to make sure that it was correctly done, and the data that was generated truly was the data and it wasn't fudged, that kind of thing. Because we just received these with the understanding that, they were done properly, and the geologist signed off on it, is, above board, all that kind of stuff. So their fear is some potentially could have not been done properly. So I don't know how we can address that other than, yeah, I'm throwing it out there. That was the question.
No, and we talked about this one time before, years ago, and Mike Kelly was in favor of it, but it was manpower. And I guess there's two parts to it, in my understanding. One is mechanical. You put this machine into this, you put this machine into that, you push this machine into this, you turn on the tap, and you measure that it flows into a cup. When the cup falls over, there's a gallon, and you count the gallons, and it's a machine that counts it, so it's recorded. But that's a mechanical thing that it has to be done right, but it could be done by a less professional person at a different pay scale, perhaps. And then you would turn the data that you got over to a hydrologist, because it's not just how many gallons came, but all these other aspects of it, how it flows from one to the other, and put it into a model. But that died because of how many people it would take for 72 hours. But I think that's still a possibility. In other words, possibly Ryan, as the superintendent, would have a group of people who would be hired on a per job basis, and these would be their tasks, and they would be basically being, he would oversee their work. He would check it out and say, yep, your plugs are all right, your things are all this. And it would be a more or less a local group that has done a few of these before, and then turn that over to the hydrologist that has been hired to review it. And don't forget, once we do that, we still have another person overlooks it. They do it. It's a second look at the very same science. But what your friend was talking about, Jim, was that the actual data was gathered, and that was the possibility that it wasn't done properly. Maybe it was, cheated on or something like that.
Yeah,
we could look into that.
Yeah, that might be a good thing to maybe suggest, that there might be a list of approved geohydro firms that can provide those type of things, other than leaving it to the person going out and getting somebody on their own. I don't know. And then we have that approved list ready, to give to whoever was, wanting to do, hydro study.
So it's a sort of certification calibration issue, really. I mean, somebody has to stand up and say this person is certified and their equipment is calibrated, really, is what the question is. And
when I was on the board with Ed years ago, we had a list of approved hydrologists, and we had to go by that list. And then after that hydrologist had compiled their information, it came to us, and we had another hydrological person look over it and confirm that it's good. And I really feel like someone who's in that business and is doing that, I can't see the incentive for them to fudge numbers. I mean, they're on a contract, they're getting paid to perform something. Whether it passes or not is not going to affect their outcome either way. So that the only incentive to fudge the numbers is if someone's trying to, slide them some money under the table or something. And so
and I think that's the fear, the nefarious type activities.
Yeah, and there's a lot of fear, and it's I'm kind of overloaded with people's fears at this point, but I just don't see that as a particular problem that we need to deal with. It seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ryan, that the system for going through a hydrological study is pretty comprehensive, and I think it's a safe and fair. No hanging chads, no, illegal election numbers.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't think I've heard that much about, I mean, there was one down the street from me that a lot of people questioned because it looked like, wow, you got that out of that well. But I think most people, it's the total amount of money that it costs, because you're hiring an engineer at I don't know, $120 an hour or something like this, instead of a 220. Instead of a workman, a craftsman who would be working under Ryan's supervision, and he would be working at considerably less amount of money to do the same job, and then turn it over to the engineer. So that's all I was thinking. I don't think we could ever do the whole thing ourselves, and I don't think we want to do the whole thing. But if there's any possibility that we're going to make any kind of a savings, it's going to come on the mechanical end of it. And I would ask the board if they would like to look into that in order to save, because these are our citizens, and this is going to be possibly one of the biggest things that they're going to have to pay to just build a house or make a restaurant or something like this. So if we could save them, even a couple of $1,000s, it might be worth it. Now, if it overloads the district's superintendent, then we might have to walk away from that. But my thought, that was it.
Oh, so there's really two parts. One is the money, can we do anything about that? And the other part is to Jim's point, the certification, calibration, and there is a list of people, and someone could point to, here's how they're certified, here's how they're calibrated, if you get the question. So that's the two answers. Yeah.
Yes.
When I did my hydro study, I talked to the hydrologist and asked if I could do a lot of the data collection to save on money. And he said, absolutely. And I went up every half hour and, logged all the numbers, and he came by 2 or 3 times a day and checked, and, I was doing fine. And 72 hours later, I saved a whole bunch of money.
Not bad.
So, I mean, I totally see what you're saying, Ed, and I think it's, it's great. But that's a conversation between the district and a hydrologist to see if they're able to do that. Because ultimately the hydrologist is signing off on all the data collection.
Yes.
And they're going to set up the system and, whatever. So I think it's a potential thing, and it's worth looking into.
Yeah.
Anyway,
yeah. The committee, so that was the 4 questions that Ryan brought to us. Since Otto isn't here, he brought up, Otto's one of the main reasons why we are here. And I think he had some good questions. And basically, one of his big questions was the concept of zones. And that was the zones. I tried to explain that to a few people. There's nothing in our ordinance about zones. The zones came up with Mike Maley's discussion about directions of water and such like this. And he does not, well, my take from it is that he does not believe that they are completely disjointed or completely connected. So he believes that there's some connection that goes back and forth, that flows and stuff like this. And so what the question that he was basically saying is, pumping in one zone impact other areas. That was what his question. And my question is, do we want to break up Mendocino Community Services District into zones? Do we want to? Is groundwater management only to protect the downtown area, or to protect all groundwater resources within the boundary of MCCSD? In other words, take the zone where he's over there. It's not, let's just for safety or for ease of discussion, say none of that water comes into town. It's all about them. Are we protecting those folks from each other's overdrafting? And I look at it and I say the answer is on the first page of the ordinance 2202. Number 1, third paragraph, and it says, I had it here for you somewhere. Oh, right here. The third paragraph, all property within the boundaries of the MCCSD shall be subject to these regulations. The intent of the ordinance is to protect the groundwater resources within the boundary of MCCSD for the common good of all present and potential users. There's no zones. It's all the people. And
Yep.
so I totally understand why somebody is on the edge of a zone, edge of an area, edge of a boundary, feels that it doesn't apply to them. But the basic, and 2020-2 is the same one we founded when we first started, but that intent. So unless we want to change that concept and say some people are on their own, some people are protected, some people, I can't see how we can, I don't see how we can help that. I don't know. Any thoughts on that zone concept?
I don't know how you'd zone it, because based on that discussion with the model, I mean, I can see that you can argue that a lot of the water goes out to sea based on the contours and everything else, but how the hell you'd ever set different limits based on that model, I have no idea. So I mean, it's a nice concept, but I wouldn't know how to go and do it with the data we have. That would be my comment.
No.
Yeah, I kind of agree.
Okay. Any other questions that we might have missed that we're kicking around before that we want to go on? I have one. Okay. Appendix C of the water use standards. Okay. This is the one that talks about how much water is granted to a use or has to be proven to receive that amount. And the retail, office, and gallery space is 0.15 gallons per square foot of area. A shop, an office, 0.15. A sleeping unit without a kitchen is 120 gallons a day. Right away, there's a difference, not just in that number, but the sleeping unit is irregardless of size, and the office space is specific to how much space, okay? So one is granted a certain amount of water allotment, and the other has a certain amount based on how large it is. That number of an office space or shop, 0.15 gallons square feet area. If you got to 800 square feet shop, office space, or gallery, 800, it would equal the amount of one overnight unit. When you multiply 800 times 0.15, you get the same amount, 120 gallons. Therefore, 800 square foot equals 800 square foot office has 2 employees. That's all you can really fit. There's not many offices that are going to have that many more. If we're generous, we're going to say we have 4 bathroom trips a day, and we're going to end up having approximately 15 gallons a day use. That's it for an office. If you're having a bad day, double it. It's not even close to the 120. And what we end up having is an imbalance. My intent is not to lower the fee that we charge the office space. That's set. We're not going to change that. My problem is we're taking an unproven, we're gifting because they were there, they existed, the office space. And we're saying if your office space is this size, you can turn it into an overnight accommodation without a kitchen. And I am here to tell you that that overnight accommodation is going to use more water. It's more complicated than that. They will use more water at a time when we can least afford it. Summer, fall, not in the dead of winter. Trust me, this town's empty of those kinds of places today. But I think that what we're talking about is basically, unless the office use was proven by a hydro study and not granted, like my shop was granted or grandfathered, the ordinance should be amended to forbid the transfer of allotments from retail office space to sleeping units. I think it's the biggest gaping hole that we have done in this town, and it's going to be more. I think that it is asking for, and these aren't, you cannot call these homes, because if they're homes, then that goes up to 800, that goes up to 200 gallons, and the office would have to be more, but there are those out there too. So I'm not saying that they can't be converted, but they should not be converted without a hydro study if they were granted. Like my whole shop complex and all the people around me, those were all granted, no hydro study. And I don't believe we would ever have that much development on that property with a 16-foot well. So I'll open this up for discussion. But this has been a big one. I've watched it, and I think we're just about ready to be in real trouble if these places keep on converting. Does anybody question the numbers?
No, I don't question the numbers, and I must say I'm in total agreement with you that that is a definite a hole in the fabric of, you know, trying to be fair with allotments. As you said, so many of them are just assumed or gifted that we have to be really careful with that.
Yeah.
As an aside to that, not to make this more complicated, but I think it should probably be dealt with at a different time, maybe our next meeting, but just throwing it out there, so many allotments are based on, for example, you know, coffee shop, restaurant, whatever, have these allotments. If they leave, they don't have the ability to go to another place in town and establish that, because the allotments go with the building, not the business.
Right.
And one thing that to me that does is it creates almost an unfairness in the business, the ability of the property owner to have a specific type of business versus others that can't. And I don't know if we need to discuss it, but it's something that was brought to my attention and I've never really thought about it. But for example, you know, if a business wanted to move locations because their rent kept going up, they don't really have the opportunity of going elsewhere in town unless it's another place that could accommodate that. Right. And that's unfortunate. I mean, you know, it's just, you know, is there anything we can do about that? So.
Hydro study.
Yeah, well, that's always the answer.
That's the one thing. And again, it goes back to that same one of it's so damn expensive.
Right. And it's
look into that.
Right. And it's the property owner who would have to do it. And they would just say, oh, no, I'm sorry, I don't want to do that. So you can't rent my space. And so the business, you know, that's trying to create something that could be good for the town is kind of stuck. But anyway, I think I probably interjected that at the wrong time, but you made me think about it.
No, I think what I would like for you to do is to sketch that out in a couple of paragraphs, and we will bring that up.
Okay. at another
Okay.
time, yes. But basically, I agree with you that that is a hole, a loophole that could be taken advantage of, not in a good way for the, you know, for the town or for, you know, for the groundwater resource.
So I was trying to follow both you and Ed, you and Jovan. How are you saying that they're different? It sounded the same argument to me.
Well, I was kind of looking at it in a different way, because it's looking at it from a person who wants to have a business at a location in town, that there are only certain locations in town because of the groundwater, you know, and a lot of times those were gifted. So because there was a bakery there,
Uh-huh.
a bakery could stay or a restaurant could be there. So it just happened at the timing that worked then.
Okay.
But, you know, they can't do it now without a hydro study. And
they're similar, but they're not the same.
yeah,
Mine is talking about a
Well,
changing a non-water using business to a water using business
right.
without a hydro study, simply because of this difference between the 800 square foot office can become an overnight unit like that. And that's my problem, because
Right,
I know that one uses more than the other. What I do believe what Jovan is talking about is the fact that it has, we have, by setting up these gifted, we've only had a couple of places that changed with a hydro study. The Pattersons changed with a water study. The bakery did not. The hotel did not. The McCollum House did not. They were all done gifted by the county, by this, by our organization. So what happens is we made them rare. We said, basically we said, there's no more restaurants in this town. You can change. You can have a water study, and I think there's only a couple of places that, from what I've seen of their water studies, they could have it. Out there by the highway, the nursery, he could have a couple of restaurants out there. He has a lot of water going by him, but not many other places can do that. And so it makes it, we made kind of rich spots. You know, you now have the ability to do this because you were doing this. Only one restaurant that I know of has ever given up their right to be a restaurant. And that was a Seagull.
Oh.
And we couldn't believe they were going to give it up, and they did.
Right.
So let's revisit those again, and I will have numerically done on paper so everybody can see it. I should have done that also, because to me it makes sense, and Jovan will bring his up. And we should probably do one more, which was brought to us by a person. I think it has to do with the rings and such, but I didn't understand that, so I couldn't touch it. But basically what it's talking about is unregulated, or excuse me, unallotted. What do we do with people who have more units on their property than they're paying a sewer bill for? Okay, that's the question. It could be an inn. It could be a multiple house with that used to be a single family and now is a 3-unit complex. If we come upon those, however we come upon those, on a fire call, or they come into your office and talk about their problem, what do we do? What should the board do? Because they are hooked up to the sewer, they are using our sewer. We should get paid for that. But if we simply say, okay, give me the money and you're okay, they just circumvented the water allotment. Even if they say, oh, don't worry, I'll live within it. I'll stay within my limit. this is something, let's talk about it next time. We'll have a couple of examples, maybe without names. And then we can hand that over, because that, to me, it's real simple about getting the money for the sewer system. Yes, we need to do that because the sewer system, it costs to do to keep them in business. We have to stay in business. And so we can't go broke while we're trying to figure out what to do with it. But I don't like the idea that we are just allocating money because they were cheating. Otherwise, everybody will go out and do what they want to do and then ask for forgiveness.
Yeah.
So,
Well, yeah, and this becomes, you know, who has authority, you know, and who starts the ball. You know, is it, you know, once we hear about something that's non-conforming, you know, is it a county zoning thing, and how do we engage the county? You know, do we tattle on people? It's all that kind of stuff, and they're difficult.
Yeah.
okay, the answer previously, Jovan, when you were there on the board with me,
Yeah.
was yes. We did tattle. We received the money and then we told the county. And the county for 5-6 years in a row didn't do a thing about it.
Yeah, I believe that the county needs to do something about it. They should be the agency that does that. And part of the reason we're all here is because our county, in their infinite wisdom, decided to have the lack of water in the town of Mendocino be the default for planning and building, which is, it's basically, talk about punting. They punted that to us to be the bad guys, and they need to step up and do their enforcement. And that's a hobby horse I've been on for a long time. But you know, I just don't like that, and I didn't like it when I was on the board, that they basically would pretty much do nothing. I mean, you know, Mendocino is their cash cow. They get money coming in from us, and that's the main driving thing for them. So I'll stop now.
That's okay. That's okay. So Brian, we'll put that on as a thing, and we'll fill out a couple of questions. And I think I'll bet you if anybody on this committee has looked around, they've noticed that some other places too. So, but the main point is we want to be, they're conflicting things. We need their money if they're going to use our services, but we don't want to be unfair to people who have done the hydro study to get there, or they didn't do something. So let's have a discussion about that. And what else should we do? Anybody have any other things they would like to have on discussion for next month?
Well, I was going to make a comment about the office turning into a bedroom. And this is a question because I don't know how the business is going in the town, so I'm just throwing it out there. Are we in danger of, you know, with the pandemic and everything, businesses going out of business and having a lot of empty space because building owners can't afford hydrological studies to turn those things into rentals as opposed to a business? I mean, I'm thinking about collateral damage from that, and I don't know how often that happens. You know, that a business disappears and somebody wants to put a rental in there, and I just don't have a clue. I'm just thinking about it.
Yes, it does happen. From where I sit, down there in the last house, last building down on Main Street, kicked a gallery out, put in a overnight accommodation. Gallery down here, they're gone overnight, actually long term. But yes, it does happen, and it will happen more. There is more. There's more money in people coming here to stay overnight than to buy things or to offices. There's going to be office spaces empty because people can work at home. Yes, and there are people who are looking at some of these office buildings and saying, you're underusing it, and there's this open door. So I will show you on the next thing, I'll show you actual numbers that's what it is.
Because I agree with you, it's unfair and something should be done about it. As I was thinking through it, I thought, well, is there any collateral damage where we'll end up with a lot of space somewhere in that? But I agree with your point that it's a gaping hole that we should fill. I was just thinking about the consequences of filling the hole, I guess.
I don't know what the consequences are. Let's take this one particular building. I'm thinking of building A. It was bought once, remodeled, bought again because it had a value, and the value it had was a couple of retail places and offices. And the only difference is that now it has a higher value for overnight accommodations. Overnight accommodations have the highest value in the town besides restaurants. Restaurants have the highest. Then there's overnight accommodations, and somewhere down by the fish pond are leather shops. But other than that, and so that's what you're going to see. You're also going to see people coming in and converting offices to long-term homes, because homes have the next highest value, probably right under restaurants.
Yeah, there's some places on the corner of School and Ukiah that are looking at stuff, I know.
Yeah. Oh, that big vacant lot?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That was approved by the review board years ago, and it got caught up in a divorce.
Oh.
Yep, got caught up in a divorce. It became the child of one for the, yes, I'll take you this one, you take that one. And then the person who had that had no desire to do anything with it, but it had value. Yeah, it was too bad. That was housing. What else we got? Dan? I was just checking to make sure you're okay. Just checking.
I'm good. Thanks, Ed.
All right. Donna? We're good? How is Hills Ranch catching up?
They are not catching up. Actually, they did start to gain a little bit, but thank God they have that much storage. They have 300,000 gallons of storage, and that's getting them through the summer. Point of View has bought 4 truckloads of water so far this summer.
Really?
Yes, it's been very intense over here.
Yeah.
I'm funny, just keeping my head ahead, as it were, too.
I didn't know.
Wow.
I'm
How's yours doing?
Donna, who was that? Yeah, Donna, who was that was having trouble?
Hallett Drive has bought 4 loads of water,
Okay.
and Hills Ranch is a couple of feet down on their storage tank. So they're missing like 50,000 gallons.
Wow.
Donna, did you have a theory or anything you wanted to discuss with us about that? Or did you want to keep that for another conversation?
I do have a theory. I could share it. I had a leak at Hills Ranch for 2 years in the wells. Could not find it. It turns out it was going into the creek. So Sea Rock benefited from it. But because it never showed up as green or anything, because and I think that might have depleted the water table that's in this flat area. It feeds Hills Ranch and Point of View. We fixed it in June, but it, for wells that I usually get a lot more water out of, I'm getting barely anything out. So I'm thinking that maybe it was because I had that leak.
Wow.
Maybe you put the leak back.
Rock would like that.
I guess it wouldn't work.
That's not good.
No,
I didn't know that.
there was we looked and couldn't find it. And that was because it was going down the creek.
Wow. Okay. Anybody anything? Okay. So those are I think there's 3 or 4 things we're going to take up on the next time, and I'll try to get more information about the thing I had so you can see it in numbers. And I think what's our next meeting date?
January 5th. 5th of January.
Okay, sound good?
Yep.
All right.
And if anyone thinks of anything between now and then, please send it to me. I think it is helpful when information comes in ahead of time and we all get a little chance to think about it and share it. Or if you talk to a neighbor or have an idea, someone wants us to look at something, I appreciate hearing what we can.
Yeah, and Ryan, I appreciate you getting back to some of the questions. I'm obviously asking questions that have been asked before, but you give me some good answers, so I really appreciate that too. So thank you.
You're
Excellent.
welcome. I'm happy to work on it.
Excellent. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank
Have
you.
a good evening.
Hey,
Bye.
Hey, y'all.
good
Bye.
night.